it's obvious that Christ is coming soon for his church.
Something is, radically different.
Climate change. Scientists are growing increasingly concerned. We have many terms linking heat and violence, and that connection has some worried as the global climate changes. A major new study finds a clear link between rising temperatures and aggression, from domestic violence to murder and even war.
We're in the midst of an epidemic of violence. Jesus said, and because lawlessness is increased, most people's love will grow cold, for the coming of the Son of Man will be just as it was in the days of Noah. Well, what were the days of Noah like? We don't have to guess. Genesis 6. Then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great on the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. Now the earth was corrupt in the sight of God, and the earth was filled with violence. Two characteristics of the society of Noah. Number one, violence. Number two, immorality. We're in the midst of a society that's turned its back upon God and is caught up in a whirlpool of horror in which we are just going down and down and down as this nation continues to be more immoral and violent in nature.
We live in a country that's changed drastically. The people pulling the strings in this country, they want to destroy the very foundation and base of America so they can remake it. This is not something that's going to come down the road, folks. This is where you're living right now.
A new world order. Such is a world worthy of our struggle and worthy of our children's future for all mankind.
All this is being orchestrated. There is a Luciferian hierarchy. We all know that. It's in your face. That's who they worship, the God of this world.
God wants us to know the season because Jesus is returning in wrath, and God does not wish that any should perish. First, the signs of nature and the weather. Jesus said, and there will be great earthquakes, and in various places plagues and famines, and there will be terrors and great signs from heaven. Jesus added that these signs would be like birth pains. That means that the closer we get to his return, the signs will increase in two ways. They will become more frequent and more intense, like birth pains. More frequent, more intense. More frequent earthquakes, more intense. More tornadoes, more intense.
Scientists are growing increasingly concerned.
We have seen changes in extremes of weather. The current changes are very unusual and cannot be explained simply as part of any natural cycle. In the last century, our climate has started to change rapidly. This isn't thought to be just a temporary blip in the system. The evidence points to a long-term change in our climate, which is happening at an unusual rate.
Now turning to Pakistan, where at least 121 people have been killed in the northwestern part of the country following days of heavy rain and landslides.
An emergency operation's been launched
to reach thousands of people stranded by floods and landslides.
Guangxi, China experienced freaky, abnormally large hail, where the hail falling from the sky was the size of chicken eggs. The storm apparently came out of nowhere on Saturday afternoon.
Chaos in Arizona when 20,000 bees sent worshipers running through the streets, desperately swatting away an attacking swarm outside of this Phoenix mosque. An absolutely terrifying ordeal for these people. Many of them were in a mosque when the bees suddenly flew inside and started stinging.
They say right around 3 o'clock is when bees suddenly just started swarming all over the place at a mosque.
Officials confirming at least 15 people were stung during the attack. The swarm was so big, roads in the area had to be shut down. Then just minutes later, more bees swarming a few miles south of the first attack.
Chile's government has temporarily banned the consumption of sardines in the south of the country after millions of dead fish turned up floating along the shores of the Cailo River. Experts are still investigating the cause of death and any possible risk to human health.
To northern Texas now, where they've been pummeled by massive hailstorm.
There is widespread damage across parts of the south. Hail bigger than a fist.
Baseball-sized softball.
Giant hail exploded through the windows.
The images we see there look biblical.
And I told my husband, I said, oh my God, there's no way she could have survived this hail. It was so huge.
The back window just completely shattered through. It was the scariest thing I've ever been through.
Almost 150 homes battered by the larger than normal hail. These storms had unusually strong updrafts.
What was most surprising was just how long the large hail fell, relentlessly pounding their homes and cars.
On Monday afternoon, the sinkhole is formed in the middle of a Madera, California street. The void grew from a relatively small crack to a gaping chasm. Authorities estimate the sinkhole is upwards of 20 feet deep.
We're witnessing end-time events. Everything is converging. We're witnessing prophecy as it unfolds, and there's a lot that's taking place. To be here today, to witness the fulfillment of the Word of God.
Flash floods in Saudi Arabia have taken people by surprise. 18 people have been killed during heavy rains and floods across the country. Unprecedented heavy downpours struck the mostly dry country this week.
The floods have washed away cars and blocked roads. 126 cities have been affected by the floods. Nearly 2,100 people have been evacuated, while some 300 homes are underwater.
Environmentalists are calling attention to what's happening in Greenland. Never seen this. Southerly winds have produced record high temperatures at 41 degrees above normal. This is an early season heat wave causing a rapid melting of the ice. How rare is this?
This is epic. It's 1 month before we've ever seen the melt. 12% of the land glaciers are now melting.
We're seeing the weather patterns very severe in some strange parts of the country. Pretty abnormal weather going on. This obviously happening globally.
The Arctic's never seen these temperatures in modern times.
And you're saying that we just haven't seen this in our lifetime. This is really abnormal stuff.
We've not seen this kind of heat, and we've never seen this kind of heat this early. It's 1 month in advance of any of the former ice melts. This is epic because also it has the strong probability of disrupting the North Atlantic jet stream, which carries the heat from the equator up into Europe.
Scientists say melting ice sheets, especially in Greenland, are changing the distribution of weight on Earth. And because of this, the wobble, which is called polar motion, has changed course.
Jesus said, and there will be great earthquakes in various places. The closer we get to his return, they will become more frequent and more intense, like birth pains. More frequent, more intense. More frequent earthquakes, more intense.
3 major earthquakes have rattled the Pacific region in 4 days. Now scientists say they are worried that the unusual pattern could mean another big one is in our future.
Breaking news. A nation in crisis.
Southwestern Japan has been hit by 2 major earthquakes.
Twin earthquakes hitting less than 28 hours apart, rattling homes and knocking down buildings.
Entire hillsides were torn apart. Japanese emergency officials say multiple people were killed, many hundreds wounded.
The death toll expected to rise. And another ominous sign tonight, one of Japan's most active volcanoes erupting.
Breaking news, another large and deadly earthquake.
A 7.8 magnitude earthquake struck the central coast of Ecuador Saturday.
The strongest earthquake to hit Ecuador in a century.
At least 587 people were killed, more than 8,000 were injured, and close to 2,000 buildings were damaged.
One town almost completely wiped out.
Hundreds more are buried under buildings. The quake follows a series of others in the Pacific and continues to shake the ground with more than 230 aftershocks. These recent seismic events have scientists wondering whether such an unusual pattern means another big one is imminent.
An unprecedented season without rains has left huge swatches of land in eastern Ethiopia bone dry and millions of people starving. Much of their livestock, which they depend on, has been wiped out. In some areas, people have lost up to 90% of their animals.
Here's your best available video. This is Boone Field in Lynchburg. Whoa, softball game between Lynchburg and Bridgewater. What's that weather, man? You ever see one of the hopes? Man, I don't know. Pictures, she's like, yeah, it's just gonna go by. I think everybody just hung out and didn't get freaked out. What would you do? Run on it. That's some kind of hell spawn, man. What a look, and then it just evaporates. Oh, heck no, not me, Jack. Does that really happen?
We're going to move on now to Houston, America's 4th largest city, overwhelmed by historic flooding.
After torrential rain forced the city to essentially shut down.
Record-breaking rainfall in the region has killed 5 people, displaced thousands, and left 9 counties under a state of emergency, making it one of the rainiest single days in history.
And in some areas, the water's still rising.
Tonight, the nation's 4th largest city still swamped by what scientists are calling a 1 in 500-year flood. 240 billion gallons of water falling in 24 hours has even animals struggling to survive.
Hundreds of strong aftershocks have occurred in southern Japan since last Thursday's large earthquake. Dozens have registered at least 4 on Japan's intensity scale, enough to cause buildings to shake.
More than 160 people have died after weeks of oppressive heat in southern and eastern India.
Much of India is now grappling with an intense heat wave.
Temperatures have hit as high as 113 degrees Fahrenheit. Drought conditions in India are currently affecting more than 300 million people in the country, killing thousands of farm animals and damaging crops.
Australia's Great Barrier Reef has the most severe bleaching in its history. 95% is white and yellow. Scientists say unless the World Heritage Site gets a break in the weather conditions within weeks, coral areas are unlikely to survive.
It's 622 miles. 520 reefs have been examined. Only 4 are unaffected. It's stunning.
Local media has reported a school in northern Malaysia has been evacuated due to an outbreak of mass hysteria. The building was shut after students and teachers claimed they saw ghosts walking the halls. School authorities alerted Islamic traditional experts, scholars, and even witch doctors to perform prayer sessions and exorcisms. The hysteria began last week after a number of people claimed they had suffered supernatural experience. A group of pupils said they had seen a black figure walking around. One teacher felt a heavy presence was hanging onto her. Another said that a black figure was trying to enter her body. A senior school staff member told the BBC, "Our students were possessed and disturbed by these spirits. We are not sure why it happened. We don't know what it is that affected us. Officials are still trying to figure out what happened."
The Triumph Arch of the ancient Temple of Bel in Palmyra, blown up by ISIS, now recreated and unveiled on London's Trafalgar Square.
London's Mayor Boris Johnson delivered some strong words to the so-called Islamic State as he unveiled a replica of Palmyra's Arch of Triumph in London's Trafalgar Square.
We're here in a spirit of defiance. Defiance.
The real monument was built by the Romans and had stood in Syria for 2 millennia before it was destroyed by the group.
For 2,000 years, a Roman triumphal arch spanned the entrance to the Temple of Bel.
The Institute of Digital Archaeology used photographs of the original arch and 3D technology to build the 2/3 scale model from Egyptian marble.
Using 3D printing technology to make it look and feel almost like the original.
The arch will be on display in London for 3 days before travelling to cities around the world as part of World Heritage Week.
April the 19th is also the exact day when a very important occult festival related to the worship of Baal or Baal begins. April the 19th is the first day of a 13-day period of time known as the blood sacrifice of the beast that culminates on the high occult holy day of Beltane on May the 1st. And it has been described as the Illuminati's second most sacred holiday. We have indeed witnessed a disturbing series of blood sacrifices during the second half of April in recent years, and many people wonder if there's a connection. April 19th is also known as the Feast of Moloch. If you're not familiar with Moloch or Molech, it is an ancient Canaanite god that is repeatedly denounced in the Old Testament. Child sacrifice was a key feature of the worship of Moloch.
A giant fireball that lit up the skies over southern Britain. This passed over the Hampshire area, witnessed by many people.
A second earthquake has struck Ecuador in less than a week. The epicenter of Thursday's magnitude 6 tremor was 100
And that is
kilometers.
some incredible video. The rare dust devil slamming into an elementary school and tossing a student high into the air. The mini twister touching down in the middle of a crowded schoolyard in China tearing through students and throwing debris in all directions, lifting one student high into the air. That student so lucky to survive.
Across the border in Canada, strong winds and dry weather have turned a stray campfire into a fire tornado, a whirling column of flames and smoke. A firefighter can be seen running away from the blaze and jumping into the river to escape.
We have residents in El Salvador scratching their heads, still wondering what exactly lit up the skies blood red earlier this week.
Witnesses across hundreds of miles reported seeing a green fireball over Southern California skies Tuesday night.
Some 60 million people across the country are in the path of violent storms today. Tornadoes, flash floods, and giant
strong winds. At least 17 tornadoes reported.
The storms unleashing twisters, in some cases even 2 at a time.
Today, for the first time ever in history, we have a full complement of signs surrounding us, and they are literally shouting that Jesus is coming soon. One sign, one particular sign, and that sign could be summed up in this word, convergence. For the first time ever in history, all of the signs are coming together. All of them are converging. Yes, we are living in the season of the Lord's return.